Hi, and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. The weather's getting better, so I'm on a nice shirt, and I've got the baseball cap instead of the beanie. So let's get started with Science Fiction Saturday. And this time around, I've decided to do a bit of a listicle, and it's going to be controversial. And some people aren't going to like it, but that helps the algorithm. It helps YouTube and see the video. So I'm going with it. And the list is my top groovy-looking spaceships in television and movies. Now, I've got to do a preface on this one. Before we get started, I'm not doing anything from Star Wars. I don't like the designs. Leaving aside how I feel about the movie series itself, I just don't like the designs. I don't like the Millennium Falcon. I don't like the big Star Destroyers. I don't like the X, Y, Z, Q, B wings. Don't like any of that stuff. I think they're kind of ordinary and they haven't got any better. I'm going with the ones that I like. You can disagree with me, please do. But we're going to start. Now, these are in no particular order because I always have trouble working out hierarchies for things. Got to go with the elephant in the room first. USS Enterprise NCC-1701, the one from the original series. The one that they retconned kind of nicely for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Classic design. It looks like nothing else seen in television or cinema beforehand. Yes, Forbidden Planet had that nice saucer-shaped ship, but adding the nacelles and the secondary hull, Mac Jeffrey's design work on that was terrific. It was groundbreaking. It looked modern in the 1960s. It had a slightly futuristic, googie kind of design, and it worked. Originally, they were going to have it the other way around, so they were going to have the main hull lower than the secondary hull. And then somebody turned it upside down and magic happened. But it looks good. Every part of the ship has a function. We know what the functions are. We knew what the functions were in the original series as well. We knew that the nacelles were the engines. We knew the secondary hull was down there where engineering and all of those other things were. We knew there was a docking bay at the back of it. We knew that most of the living quarters and everything else were in the saucer part. So it was well designed from that point of view. And there was, as I said, nothing like it beforehand. It is a chef's kiss, wonderful design. In the decades since that, in more than half a century since that. Is it more than half a century? It's got to be, yeah. In the more than half a century since then, designers over the years have built a whole bunch of ships based on that design, elaborating on it, making them more modern, making them have different functions. It stood the test of time, and it just looks wonderful. Don't know whether there's any kind of geek household in the world that doesn't have a Starship Enterprise in it somewhere. It is iconic, and it's best of all believable. I like it a lot. I will continue liking it. The second one is Serenity, a Firefly class ship from the TV series Firefly. It was partly designed by Joss Whedon, but we'll let that pass, and a production designer called Kerry Meyer. And it looks good. It looks industrial. It looks like what it is. It's a light transport vehicle, and it's got a good design. The storage is at the back. The living quarters and the flight deck are up above and at the front. It's got engines that turn around so it can do a VTOL kind of landing, vertical takeoff and landing, and it's a beautiful design. It doesn't look polished. It doesn't look spiffy. Feels like it doesn't have the industrial base that the Federation has in Star Trek. And it doesn't have to have a special engine to go faster than light because nothing travels faster than light in the Firefly universe. It's all in one enormous solar system which has lots of terraformed asteroids and small planets. So it's basically an interplanetary ship rather than an interstellar ship. And it feels right. It feels like this cast of characters belongs in this ship because it is basically a truck. And we need space trucks. And in fact, there was a movie called Space Truckers with Dennis Hopper I've talked about on the channel before. And Serenity's name actually means something. I'll leave that to the Firefly geeks to look that up. But I like it. I think it works. Even though it does bear some very slight design similarities to Star Trek ships, it is something of its own. And it works really well for that. Next up, we've got one of my favourites, Rocinante from The Expanse, which is a beautiful and an incredibly functional design. Based on the novels by Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham, The Expanse is one of the best science fiction series of the last decade, and it will always have a place in my heart. The thing about the Rocinante, named after Don Quixote's horse for those who didn't know, is that it has a backstory and a legend. And it's an interesting spaceship in that it's designed for both freefall and high acceleration as well. It's a warship, and it's a derelict warship that the crew of the Rocinante found and claimed legally and modified for their own purposes as basically a freight runner, and then as a part of a resistance against authoritarian regimes. Originally, the Rocinante was a Martian warship called the Tochi, which was part of the Martian Congressional Republic Navy. So it came equipped with a lot of things. I'm just looking up the stats on this. It's got an Epstein drive, which is an incredibly high efficiency reaction drive. It can get up to like 10-20 Gs if it needs to. It's got 6-point defense cannons, which basically are enormous Gatling guns that shoot out depleted uranium bullets. And with the distances in space, it's a close order weapon, that one. When the ships get close, that's when you break out your point defense cannons. And they look great in the series. The special effects, of course, are wonderful. It also has 2 torpedo launchers, and later in the series they actually mount a railgun down the spine of the ship. And railguns, being electromagnetic accelerators, can throw a lot of mass very quickly, and it's basically a ship killer weapon. It's classed as a light frigate, and it's in the Corvette class, and it looks great when the characters are living in it and using the coffee machine. I don't know how coffee machines work in zero-G, but I'm glad they do. It feels like a lived-in thing, and it feels like a home for the crew of the ship. And there are a lot of good ship designs in The Expanse as well. There are all the different human cultures and non-human cultures with ships in this one. And the ships all have a grimy, gritty look, but they're also incredibly functional objects and functional pieces of technology. And it gives the whole series a verisimilitude that, for me, is unequaled in science fiction television or streaming service. Next one, we're going for an unusual battleship, which is based on a real battleship. It started out as anime and it's had a whole bunch of live action adaptations, and it's culturally connected in a deep way to Japan. That is Space Battleship Yamato, also known as Star Blazers in some markets, which was a TV series at first, where the Japanese World War II battleship Yamato, which was sunk by the Allies, is resurrected and used as a spaceship with a tachyon drive to ward off an alien invasion. This triggered a whole bunch of patriotism in Japanese people, which, given the Imperial Japanese era it came from, was possibly a little misplaced. But it's got a weapon called a wave motion gun, which basically is the tachyon drive. But through the ship and out the front of it, there's a hole in the front of it. The wave motion gun can launch high-speed, high-energy tachyons, which are faster than light particles, of course. Basically, the whole ship is an enormous cannon when it needs to be. And like all of the things like Macross and Robotech and all that kind of stuff that came out of the 1980s in anime, it's got some interesting science fiction aspects, and it does try to get the science right as much as it can. The series got condensed into a film edition in 1977, which ran 130 minutes. They combined elements of key episodes and things like that. Then in 1978, there was Farewell to Space Battleship Yamato, which was another anime. There was Space Battleship Yamato 2 again in 1978. There's Yamato The New Voyages, a television movie. Be Forever Yamato in 1980. Space Battleship Yamato 3 in 1980. Final Yamato in 1983. Yamato Resurrection in 2009, which was a project that was kind of stalled and ended by legal arguments. There were spin-offs as well. There was Yamato 2520 in 1995. There was Great Yamato Number Zero in 2004, another anime. A remake, live-action remake in 2010, which I've seen and which is a lot of fun. Yamato 2199 in 2012. Yamato 2202 in 2017. Yamato 2205 in 2021. And Be Forever Yamato Rebel 3199, which is an upcoming sequel. So this one's got a long footprint, retrofitting a Japanese World War II warship into being basically a space battleship is a cool idea. And because of that cultural footprint, it went on for a very long time. Now, this next one's a bit tongue-in-cheek because it's not a serious project. It's the Eagle 5 from Spaceballs. The Eagle 5 is Lone Star's spaceship, which is basically a 1986 Winnebago Chieftain 33 with wings and a rocket out the back. It's literally a mobile home, and that's kind of cool. It was meant as a piss take of the Millennium Falcon, which very much felt like a mobile home in space with guns on the front. And I like it. I like the fact that they satirized the idea of a small spaceship being basically a mobile home in space by making that literal. rather than just figurative. It works for me. I don't know whether you've ever been in a mobile home for any length of time, but they can feel a lot like a spaceship. You're in an enclosed, hermetically sealed life support system where you can go to the toilet, you can watch TV, you can cook food, you can sleep, you can do all the things you do on a spaceship, only it's on wheels. And I love the idea of the Eagle 5. Mel Brooks, of course, being the satirist he is very keenly aware of those cultural touchstones. When Spaceballs came out, people were saying it's satirizing Star Wars, and Star Wars came out a decade ago. It's a little late to the game, and people didn't realize that Star Wars would then roll on into the 21st century. Rewatching Spaceballs, a lot of people love it. It's got a real good fan base, and the Eagle 5 is a part of that. And there's nothing not to love in a Mel Brooks movie. So the Eagle 5, definitely one of my favorites. The SA-23E Mitchell Hayden Starfury from Babylon 5. The Starfuries are the little fighter ships on Babylon 5. I love the fact that the pilot's sitting right up front and personal with whatever they're fighting with. I like the maneuverability of them, even though, of course, at the time Babylon 5 came out, all of the computer effects of the space battles and everything else were done basically on an Amiga computer with a video toaster add-on, and it took immense amounts of time to render the space battles. But I like the Starfury. There are a lot of them, so you get a swarm of them coming out of Babylon 5 to fight the shadows and to fight other things, and the pilots were right there. It felt a believable technology. And I think that's one of the saving graces of a lot of these spaceships that we're going to talk about. The technology's got to feel believable. It's got to feel like there was purpose in the way it was designed, and that purpose being to give high visibility to the pilots and to give both propulsion and weapon systems commensurate with that visibility. I believe they are retconning a lot of the special effects in Babylon 5 for a future release, and they've done the animated add-on that J. Michael Straczynski this year. I've got a great fondness for this one. At the time, the special effects were good because you were watching it on a cathode ray television. It is a believable technology, and it was used to great effect and to move the story forward so many times during the run of the series. The other one I've got is the Shadow Vessels from Babylon 5, where the Shadows, who are an incredibly advanced and malevolent race who don't believe that the younger species in space deserve to be there. It's creepy. It looks like a spider. It has a very unusual design as well, because one of the shadow beings sits in the center of the spaceship and is embedded in the middle of the spaceship and is basically the CPU for the spaceship, so the pilot becomes the ship in a very literal way. And of course the shadows themselves were creepy as hell. If people were arachnophobic, this is not a series you want to watch, because the shadows, who communicated only sparingly with anybody else, were incredibly creepy and incredibly powerful and dangerous and icky. And the shadow ships also have the advantage of being really deeply black. They're like that Vanta black paint, which looks like a hole in space, and they could just kind of manifest and it started attacking something. Creepy, crazy technology. It's at the extreme end of alienness for any of these spaceships. Understanding the technology of a shadow ship was beyond human capability, even in the future of Babylon 5. And their malevolence and their antagonism towards the lesser species, including the humans, the Minbari, the Centauri, all the rest of them, made them extra creepy. But the design works because it triggers that emotional response in people when they see it. The last two I have for you are favourites of mine. One of which because I know it incredibly well. The other one because I watched it when I was young. The first one is the wonderful and terrific, believably wonderful Eagle transporters from Space 1999. Now, I have problems with Space 1999 as a series of fiction because science was often really ropey. The acting was poor at best at times. I think the designs of the aliens were laughable most of the time, even though I do like the Rudy Gary costumes and I love the 1970s retro futuristic look of the space station. It's the Eagle transporters that most of all look wonderful. They look like an extension of NASA technology into what was then 30 years or so in the future. And yeah, that nose cone looks right. The removable transport modules, which could be used for freight or could be used for passenger modules. The positions of the rockets in the four corners of the main body of the ship worked really well. It's just a lovely design, and Even with the rudimentary technology of 1970s television, it was made to look wonderful. And Brian Johnson's design with the structural scaffolding look about it was great. It worked for me. There's a new game out called Starfury, which Bethesda have just put out. And people are designing all sorts of spaceships using that computer game. And I have seen one where someone did a spaceship that was all scaffolding because they found out the AI of the game would shoot at the middle of a spaceship right in the center of it. So they built a spaceship that was probably based in some way on the Eagle transporter. And that reminded me of the Eagle for some reason. And it looks right. It looks good. And the models of the Eagle transporter are going for an enormous premium online if people want to buy them, because there is that nostalgia factor for a number of people, but it's also a groovy, wonderful, marvelous design. Left the biggest one for last. The biggest one of all. And you're probably not going to guess what it is. I'll give you a moment to guess. The planet Earth from the Wandering Earth 1 and 2. 2019 we got the Wandering Earth, 2022 we got the sequel Wandering Earth 2. They were both based on a story by Liu Cixin, and it's a blockbuster Chinese science fiction movie series where the human race finds out that the sun is going to expand into a red giant within 100 years, and so everybody gets their ducks lined up and decides that the only way to save the human race is to bung enormous engines on one side of the planet Earth, stop its rotation, and light out for Alpha Centauri. It's going to take hundreds of years. It's going to mean the death of most of the human race, but they're going to retain enough people to be able to pilot it. There's actually a ship which goes ahead of the Earth and clears out any debris and other things in the way. And that's a couple of years travel away. The main spaceship is the planet Earth with enormous rocket engines bunged on the back of it. And I love it. It's a bold concept. It's not an original concept because it has been used before in science fiction. But seeing it writ large on the big screen, I saw it in 2019 before the pandemic hit, in Sydney, in a cinema near Chinatown on George Street, with a predominantly Chinese diaspora audience. And they went mad for the film. They loved the fact that it was showcased not only Chinese technology and Chinese movie making, but a lot of the main characters were Chinese, and the cultural tropes of that culture were on display. There were other people from other races on it. I kind of sat in there feeling slightly alien in a sense, because it wasn't my culture being displayed on there, and I was so used to science fiction where white people who spoke English, and people who spoke English in general, were the people who were showcased in the science fiction movies. And suddenly I was dropped into a different viewpoint on science fiction and a different viewpoint on science fiction movie making, and a very different cultural viewpoint. You can argue what the Chinese government's doing, and I disagree with much it's doing. A lot of it is egregious shit, and in some ways these movies are considered propaganda in exactly the same way that a movie like Armageddon is propaganda for America. I like the movie series. I like what it does. I like the fact that it takes me out of my cultural comfort zone when I watch it, and I love the idea of bunging rockets on the planet Earth and just launching it into an incredibly long and difficult journey to save the human race. You've got to love that kind of stuff. That's big scale, big brain science fiction thinking. So that's it for this time around. A little bit different. I'm not doing movies specifically, but I'm just geeking out about the wonderfulness of the designers and the creators over the last 60 years who have given us such iconic spaceships and have told stories with those spaceships as a setting in a way that's enriched a lot of different cultures. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell, do all the good things. If you want to support the channel more, you can become a channel member. There's a link in the description on how to do that. Or you can donate each month at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. And thank you to everybody who does it and everybody who watches this. So next time around, I've got a new kind of hidden gem movie series that I'm doing on Monday, which is Sunday if you live on some parts of the planet that are a little bit backwards. And then, of course, I've got Anything Can Happen Wednesday. So it's all going to be fun. The joy continues. And until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some movies with the grooviest spaceships in the world. And I'll catch you next time.